Last week in Michigan politics, how will the state spend the dollars you pay in taxes? What's being proposed for the annual state budget as lawmakers get to work? Plus, the 2026 campaign season continues to pick up steam. As new announcements roll out or are expected, we break down the current field of your choices to represent you. And talk of tariffs is causing big concerns here in Michigan. We dig into why that is and how tariffs currently on pause from the Trump administration could impact you if put into place. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. And we begin at the state capitol, where a large crowd gathered outside on Wednesday to protest policies of President Donald Trump. Hundreds with signs hoping to send a message to Washington. They want the administration to know they don't like what they're seeing. 13 on Your Side's Micah Cho spent the day in Lansing and has that story.
For the hundreds of protesters surrounding the state capitol, a lot of them are here to express their concerns about current issues the Trump administration is currently handling, such as mass deportations, unrest in the Middle East, and LGBTQ rights. A lot of those are coming in the forms of signs and flags. A lot of the signs here actually are also showing their displeasure with Elon Musk.
We will fight for you. We will stand beside you because trans lives matter.
As one of Michigan's first openly gay state senators, Democrat Jeremy Moss stood on the steps of the Capitol building to address a crowd of protesters standing up to President Donald Trump's policies. Moss touched on one of the president's first executive orders declaring the federal government's stance on only two genders. From Palestinian flags to posters criticizing Elon Musk, who has been heading the newly formed Department of Governmental Efficiency, there wasn't a specific focus that protesters zeroed in on. Lansing was just one of 50 protests that have been organized across the country, taking place at state capitals, not only aimed at the Trump administration's policies, but Project 2025. Amara Clevenger was one of the protesters that spent the afternoon in the wind and cold. And while there's many policy decisions she's against,
there's not enough time to go over all of the reasons.
The threat of tariffs hit home for her.
I'm a small business owner, so the tariffs really affect what we do. We're in computer repair. It's harder to order parts, especially now not being able to even get packages from China delivered. Even just a warning about the tariffs, many of our vendors raised their prices preemptively before they even went into effect.
We also did try to talk to some protesters in the crowd that were carrying Palestinian flags and signs. We wanted to ask them what they thought about President Trump's comments about Gaza on Tuesday. However, they did decline to comment. For now, in Lansing, I'm Micah Cho for 13 on Your Side.
And inside the Capitol, it was budget day in Lansing that day. Lawmakers taking the first step in deciding how Michigan will spend your money in the next fiscal year. We were in Lansing and we're hearing some very different dynamics from last year or the year before. Now, if Governor Whitmer wants to get her proposal passed, the new Republican House majority members of it would have to agree. But while state and local issues factored into this proposal, there was a lot of talk about what we were hearing out of Washington, D.C. How will Michigan spend your taxpayer dollars? That's what lawmakers began the process of deciding Wednesday morning as those on the House and Senate Appropriations Committees heard Governor Gretchen Whitmer's proposal for next year's state budget.
This budget will lower costs, create jobs, improve student outcomes, and support our seniors.
Whitmer's administration proposing an $83.5 billion budget, up roughly $1 billion from the last budget that itself set a record. Proposals including money to continue things like free meals for school children and what the administration has branded as the state's Working Families Tax Credit. A tax on vape and non-tobacco nicotine products was also proposed, as well as over $500 million to help raise per-pupil funding in schools to $10,000. But this year, getting proposals through will face a much different kind of hurdle.
A budget that's $83 million, we're not seeing it go down. We're continuing to see it potentially ratchet up a little. And that's not really what I believe the people of Michigan are looking for.
To get it passed, the proposal from a Democratic administration who had enjoyed a unified Democratic capital for the last 2 years will now have to go through a new Republican majority in the state House.
I think what we need to do is we need to look at every single line item and just start asking them the question, is it constitutional? Is it in the law? Is it really in the best interest of the state?
But just as a protest against policies of President Donald Trump's new administration raged outside, concerns about reporting out of the nation's capital already seeping into these budget talks, as many have seen deep confusion as the Trump administration had attempted to pause federal grants and loans and review their compliance with his executive orders. Given that almost half of this proposed budget rests on federal dollars, the uncertainty was palpable from some lawmakers as they hoped to get started.
I mean, it's incredibly difficult, right? I mean, we hear chaos and confusion, and maybe people are getting tired of hearing that, but the truth of the matter is when you even suggest that these funds are in danger or might disappear or departments are being reconsidered, that throws the entire system into survival mode.
And there is a legal deadline on July 1st to get bills passed and onto the governor. And Governor Gretchen Whitmer held a ceremonial signing this week of 2 bills surrounding the topic of sextortion. The bills, known as Jordan D's Law, legislation named in honor of 17-year-old Jordan DeMay, who died by suicide in Marquette in 2022 after becoming victim to an online sexual exploitation scheme. In September of 2024, 2 brothers from Nigeria were sentenced to 17.5 years in prison after pleading guilty to sexually exploiting over 100 teenage boys and young men across the country, including DeMay. The new law creates criminal penalties for threatening to distribute sexually explicit pictures or video of another person in order to blackmail them. Former U.S. Attorney Mark Totten tried the case where the brothers were convicted and warned of a growing threat of online sextortion.
This is a serious threat that is only getting worse, and it can happen fast. We know that the time from initial contact to Jordan's passing was a mere 2 hours.
Jordan D's Law goes into effect in April and was passed with near unanimous bipartisan support in the Senate. Democratic Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks filed suit against Republican Speaker of the House Matt Hall over 9 bills that were never presented to the governor for a signature. The lawsuit claims that the GOP-led House of Representatives has a constitutional duty to deliver the bills after being passed in both chambers of the legislature last session. The lawsuit seeks the court to order the House to deliver the bills, declare that the House has a constitutional duty to do so, and to provide a permanent injunction against the House from failing to present the bills. We spoke with Speaker Hall before the lawsuit was filed, and he said the House was going to do a thorough legal review of the matter. Brinks said in a statement, quote, "The Michigan Constitution makes it abundantly clear. Every bill passed by the legislature is required to be presented to the governor." Brinks has requested expedited oral hearing from the court. In our continuing coverage of possible changes to federal funding impacting local organizations, Head Start in Kent County said earlier this week it was dealing with funding issues. Executive Director Madonna Princer said funds that are normally processed in 24 hours were still pending from last week as of midday Wednesday. She said they had to use other funding they receive in order to make payroll this week. Princer said this program provides preschool and infant educational services along with health, nutrition, and mental health services.
These families rely on us for not only the educational piece for their children, but the care that they need in order to go to their jobs and to, if they're back in school, to attend school. So a disruption in those services has a huge ripple effect in our community.
She added the program in Kent County is one of 5 programs she said was impacted statewide and more than 50 impacted nationwide. The Literacy Center of West Michigan said this week it was also feeling the heat. The center's executive director, Wendy Falb, said they received notice Tuesday that a $300,000 grant from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services was frozen. She said the center was awarded this money for the second time back in November to cover 2 years of services. This pays for citizenship classes where people can learn English in order to pass the required tests.
And these are huge contributors to our communities. I mean, we've had doctors from other countries come through, and these are people that are then, working in our elder care. And these are needed jobs and needed folks, and they are very proud of becoming citizens and contribute significantly to the West Michigan region.
Falb said these classes were full with a waiting list. While the center has some funding to fall back on, they were set to approach donors in the meantime for additional money. And now to your voice, your vote. After U.S. Senator Gary Peters announced last week he would not seek re-election in 2026, another pivotal seat is up for grabs in Michigan. There's been a lot of talk and signals about who may or may not look to replace him, as we reported last week. But the latest in that list, State Senator Mallory McMorrow. The Associated Press is reporting multiple people familiar with the plans have confirmed to the AP McMorrow is preparing to enter the race. McMorrow gained prominence in 2022, 4 years after being elected to the chamber, following a floor speech that went viral as she pushed back on a Republican colleague who accused her of grooming. McMorrow joins a list of names being speculated as possible contenders, including former Republican Congressman and Senate candidate Mike Rogers and former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And in the race to replace term-limited Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the latest high-profile name is entering the ring. Democratic Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson announced this week he'll be running. We sat down with Swanson as he made his way to Grand Rapids Friday.
It may be the dead of winter, but the race to replace outgoing Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer is still heating up. The race gaining its newest high-profile contender on Thursday.
You're going to learn about Chris Swanson if you haven't heard, because we're going to cover the state.
Democratic Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson announcing he will run for the seat.
I've reached the point where 6 years as a sheriff and all the things we've done, I want to do for more, like 10 million more.
But Swanson may not have the same name recognition in some circles as someone like Democratic Secretary of State and fellow candidate Jocelyn Benson, who's run multiple statewide campaigns. So who is he? Swanson first came to national prominence during the nationwide protests in the summer of 2020, following the death of George Floyd.
Not 1 ounce of damage, nobody's arrested.
Swanson choosing to march with the protesters.
Let's walk!
That moment is leadership. And I don't say that to be, braggart, but when you're in high crisis and you got to make a decision, that's not the time to phone a friend. Prepare in peace to perform in chaos.
His profile growing from there as he spoke at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago last summer. But when we asked what specific policies he would seek to put in place as governor.
What does that take the form of, policy-wise, legislatively? What are the top issues that you want to tackle that you feel will get that done?
Yeah. Public safety and education, money. Michigan has a growing economy, but we have so much more to do and so much growth potential. I've owned businesses my whole life on top of working for the government. We know how to create money by selling more products and goods and services. Any legislation that helps protect, serve, and unify, that's what I'm going to get behind.
But as he forges a wider profile, differing himself will likely be a key focal point for voters considering their options.
So to get through the Democratic primary, a lot of it is to the Democratic base, which includes labor, which includes people that are true long-term Democrats. Then you get to the general, and the ability that I have had, even as a sheriff, a Democratic sheriff in a big county, a huge base of people who said, you're the only Democrat I'd ever vote for.
And President Trump's administration on Monday paused the proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico for at least a month. This after both countries came to agreements with the U.S. over security at the borders. Some of the state's top industries could still face challenges if these tariffs do take effect. We spoke to experts on how these wide-ranging tariffs could impact our state if put into place.
There is concern here in Michigan.
Concern over potential threats to key trade in this border state.
We are a North American trade and transit hub.
President Donald Trump announcing U.S. tariffs on multiple close trading partners.
10% on imports from China and 25% on imports from Canada and Mexico, with the exception of Canadian energy resources set for 10%.
We already, over the last month, had already heard from businesses across West Michigan that they were slowing down or maybe even freezing hiring because they had to wait to figure out how all the costs of these tariffs would build in.
While Trump and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced Monday a pause to those tariffs as Mexico deploys additional troops to its northern border and negotiations get underway. The pause is only set to last a month. From agriculture, which accounts for roughly a quarter of Michigan's workforce, according to the state's Farm Bureau.
These are our number 1 and number 2 export markets for agriculture, for farmers, for rural communities and rural businesses.
To its all-important auto industry, experts and insiders on high alert.
Here in Michigan, we spend a lot of time bringing in auto parts. And in fact, our auto supply chain will bring in auto parts, send them back, bring them back, and they'll cross the border several times until it's made into a final car here in the United States.
Here in Michigan, where the automotive industry has driven the state's economy for decades, what could that mean for buyers on the lot?
We're still talking on the order of $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 per vehicle.
Even if the car is built in the U.S., auto analyst Mike Wall says don't be so sure that you'd be spared.
Because there is a significant amount of componentry that comes out of Canada and Mexico, and maybe that adds another $1,000, $1,500, again, depending on the component.
But economic professor Paul Isley said these kinds of tariff threats could have lasting impacts on the trade of the future.
The White House is counting on the fact that everybody wants to trade with the United States. And we're going to test that to see if it's true.
And on Monday, some West Michigan businesses were closed, participating in a Day Without Immigrants, a national movement to draw attention to their positive contributions to the community amid crackdowns on immigration. 13 on Your Side's Jeremiah Brown spoke with the owners of 2 Lakeshore businesses on why they chose to take part.
We came 40 years ago from Mexico, my mom and my dad and my brothers. And 21 years ago, we decided to open a restaurant.
Anna Salazar opened El Tapatio in Muskegon in 2004 while working another job at the same time. On Monday, they decided to close in solidarity of a Day Without Immigrants, a national movement aimed to bring attention to the contributions immigrants bring to communities.
It's important to show the message of how immigrants are a backbone of this nation and how our economy doesn't run without immigrants and immigration.
Anna and her daughter tell us that one day may not bring much change, but it is a great sacrifice for a small business and their staff.
I came to this country with a lot of, a bag full of, perspective. So to see my place dark today is mean a lot for me, To see my place, no customers, no employees, is a lot to me.
Navarro's Mexican Takeout is another business that stood in solidarity with owner Maricela Sierra, saying, "As a business owner and a product of immigrants, I recognize the sacrifice my family made to build a better life. Immigrants are the heart of our communities, contributing their hard work, culture, and dedication every single day."
I just want to say thank you to all to my customers, my loyal customers, and I hope they understand, and support our family, our country, all the immigrants.
And a decision by the Trump administration raised questions this week about PFAS chemicals in Michigan's water. That's because a federal plan to limit PFAS discharge was withdrawn, leaving it up to the states to decide. 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson spoke with the co-chair of the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network about how this could affect our state's water supply.
PFAS is a group of man-made chemicals. There's anywhere from 12 to 14,000 of these, but their big selling point in manufacturing is that they don't break down, which is why they're called forever chemicals.
Sandy Winstell of Belmont lost her husband in 2016. He died from liver cancer.
What we thought was a Christmas tree farm across the street had actually been a dump site where Wolverine Worldwide dumped tannery waste in the 40 acres, and that contaminated our groundwater, and that PFAS has contaminated 25 square miles here.
Winstell is now an expert with the Great Lakes PFAS Action Network. Under the Biden administration, discharge limits were set on 6 types of PFAS. The Trump administration would limit those restrictions.
Taxpayers are either going to pay for it or people are going to get sick and die.
President Trump's order now puts the decision on local and state officials to address the PFAS contamination in water.
It's not something that's going to be effective to change state by state, especially in a Great Lakes state. Because if we change our policies on how we use it, but Wisconsin doesn't, it's still going to pour into Lake Michigan.
In 2018, Plainfield Township installed a filtration system to remove the forever chemicals from its water system. In a statement, the township superintendent says, regardless of what decisions are made at the federal level, the state of Michigan has established its own standards for certain PFAS compounds that remain the requirement for municipal water systems. Additionally, Plainfield Township is committed to exceeding all federal and state safety standards for PFAS. Winstell says she hopes the Trump administration decision is only a temporary halt and won't affect the PFAS filtration here in West Michigan.
I'm hoping we can find someone in this administration that will listen and hopefully move this forward.
Kiara Patterson, 13 on your side.
The city of Muskegon Heights continues their search for the soon-to-be-open city manager position. Coming up, why a city meeting was canceled this week and what it means for the search. And now to continuing coverage and the latest developments concerning the city of Muskegon Heights. A committee of the whole meeting was canceled this week because there weren't enough members to hold it. It comes as the city is racing to find new top leadership. 13 on your side's Julia Gorman was there and spoke with the mayor after the meeting was canceled. Julia asked her about several topics that the committee is talking about right now.
Discussion was planned for Monday's meeting surrounding what's going on with the city manager position. Last week, we reported the current interim city manager, Melvin C. Burns, is resigning at the end of this month. The role of the city manager per the city is to, quote, direct and supervise the administration of all departments, officers, and agencies of the city, end quote. There was heated discussion at a meeting last week surrounding how to move forward filling this spot. While there was no meeting Monday, I spoke with the mayor after that was announced to get an update on the situation. It appears the city is looking to hire both an interim city manager and then a permanent one.
We were trying to, with the interims, to get the people in place to interview. With the permanent, we were to vote on a search firm. Without that, we're at a standstill.
I also asked the mayor about the relocation of the post office. USPS is looking to move the post office to a bigger space than the current location on Peck Street, and that could be anywhere within the 49444 zip code, which includes Muskegon, Fruitport, and Norton Shores. The mayor says this isn't the city's doing or up to the city, but the city is trying to help keep the post office in Muskegon Heights.
We've got to find a place. Gotcha. Or if there's any property owners out there in the city of Muskegon Heights who has a building that's available.
As of December 18th, USPS posted on its website about collecting comments on the relocation from the public for 45 days. I have reached out to clarify the end of that period. USPS says the new location will be, quote, as close as reasonably possible to the current location, end quote. For now, you can expect everything to continue as normal. I did speak with one man who came to the meeting about why this causes concern.
We got a lot of elder who it's convenient to where they can only have to drive or get there a few blocks.
Gotcha.
And to go from a few blocks to a mile and a half, 2 miles plus, can be difficult for elders.
The city has a pre-written letter you can send to USPS on its website. I've posted that and where to send that letter in this story on 13onyourside.com. I'll also let you know when I get an answer about that comment period. Reporting in the newsroom, I'm Julia Gorman, 13 on your side.
And with the winter drawing to a close soon, local governments are getting ready for road construction season. In Muskegon, there are several projects starting this spring. The largest is the complete reconstruction of Southern Avenue from Seaway to Lakeshore Drives. It is scheduled to start early in the spring and will last most of the summer. They have a few smaller projects on First Street, Oak Avenue, Sun Dolphin Road, and Amity Avenue. City leaders say they will work with impacted homeowners to limit the disruptions during construction.
The nature of the work requires that certain things will be disrupted and their lives will be impacted. But we always work in order to lessen the time frame of the projects. We always work to lessen the impact on individual homeowners and businesses to the extent that we can get folks to the businesses and to their homes directly.
The city is also working to replace lead service lines along Apple Avenue and in 3 neighborhoods this summer. Muskegon's Department of Public Works is giving people a chance to review those plans and speak to project leaders during an open house later this month. That's set for Wednesday, February 19th at the Public Works office from 4 to 6 p.m. And there's a renewed effort in Muskegon County to connect veterans and their families with unclaimed benefits. 13 on your side's Kiara Patterson is back after she spoke with the Department of Veteran Affairs in Muskegon about that campaign.
We have about 25% of the veterans or surviving spouses nationally who are actually reaping the benefits of some kind of benefit that they applied for.
While Veterans Day is in November, Michael Bow from the Muskegon County Department of Veteran Affairs says it's always the right time to support veterans in West Michigan communities.
It's essential. I mean, nobody knows that we're here if we don't tell them that we're here.
The Muskegon County Department of Veteran Affairs has relaunched a campaign to connect veterans and their families to unclaimed benefits with the help from the state of Michigan. Bow says besides medical and health care benefits, the campaign also helps veterans apply for financial compensation.
So if somebody was exposed, I'm just going to use Agent Orange while they're in Vietnam and they have some kind of cancers or whatever they might have, they didn't file for VA benefits because they just didn't. We're going to try to get them in to do that if they have any of those presumptive conditions.
This marks the 3rd year for the campaign. Sarah Powers from Revel Marketing says the campaign has helped hundreds of veterans since 2022.
It did very well the first 2 years. All you have to do is go to yourvetbenefits.com and fill out a simple form, and someone will get back with you.
Although the campaign is for Muskegon County residents and those living in northern Ottawa County, Bow says his department can offer help to veterans across West Michigan.
If somebody takes that beer coaster and they take it home to their family in Newaygo County, we're going to help that person too. Or we're going to direct them to, we might not help them here, we might direct them to the nearest service officer to them.
And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. We'll see you next week.